Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Megan if you're new here. I'm doing Vlogmas right now, so if you've stumbled on this, we are doing 25 days of video uploads. We are on day 13 that you are watching right now. So welcome. Don't forget to like, subscribe. In general, I usually post like lifestyle, wellness related content. Today's video is actually going to be kind of like a sit down chat with me. I just have my phone here. And it's going to be kind of talking about boundaries specifically that I set this past year and just like the impact that it's had in my life so far, and you know why I feel like boundaries are important. But before I get started, I kind of wanted to give you a bit of like a backstory in terms of like who I used to be and why I essentially had to implement boundaries. So I was definitely, and still struggle with this to this day, but I was definitely someone who struggled with people pleasing. I said yes to absolutely everything. My schedule was always ram-packed. I was always the person like someone could go to for something because I would always say yes and do the thing. I was frequently burnt out. I would have like regular like monthly meltdowns and just like not feeling my best. And I wouldn't necessarily say like my life was in shambles, but I definitely like wasn't putting myself first. I wasn't filling my own cup. I wasn't prioritizing my own needs. Like everyone else around me came before me. And I used to always like think of that behavior as I was just like a caring and giving and kind person. But since like in the last couple of years, I've been doing a lot of work on myself and you know, working with different like mentors and coaches, and ultimately like I've identified so many patterns and behaviors in my life that just aren't serving me. A lot of that comes from like your childhood, which I'm not gonna like get into like too deep today, but just like as a child, we go through certain experiences. They don't even necessarily have to be bad, but we develop this like emotional response to something, and we tie like a feeling or a habit or a behavior to that certain thing, which then stays with us as we grow up, and then we develop certain behaviors. And in my case, one of those things was like people pleasing and not prioritizing my own needs, like putting myself last and feeling like everyone else should come before me. But ultimately, like when you don't take care of yourself and your needs, you then feel worse and you feel like crap, and therefore you're not able to show up in an optimal state for the other people around you, or for your work, for yourself, for anything that's going on in your life, right? So it's important that you have to put yourself first. Even when you think of like going on a plane, for example, they talk about at the beginning, like if something were to happen and the oxygen mask comes down, you have to put your oxygen mask on first before you help someone else, because you have to be in a good state to be able to help someone else. So anyways, needless to say, like I was always a people pleaser, and that was my go-to, and I definitely still fall into that category. It's something that I think I'll have to work on like for the rest of my life, but I have come a very long way. Anyone who knows me will say like they feel like my life has probably looks a lot different than it used to be, and a big part of that is obviously just like doing the work, like uncovering where these behaviors come from, overcoming like limiting beliefs I have about myself, coming to terms with certain like, you know, moments or stories that I've told myself, or memories that like no longer serve me anymore, and letting things go. So there's a lot of like internal work that goes on, but a big part of that work is setting boundaries, which is kind of what I wanted to talk about today, because I feel like it's so important for people to set boundaries in their lives and stick to those boundaries and make sure that those boundaries really serve them. And so basically, I probably should have got an actual definition for this, so this is just like my interpretation. But basically what I mean by setting a boundary in your life is you're basically deciding something for yourself that keeps you, your needs, your safety, whatever, like top of mind. So you're putting things in place. Again, I'm going to get specific on this later, but you're putting certain things in place in your life to make sure that you are taken care of first and that it makes you feel good. And when these boundaries are in place, you know when something happens, oh no, I have something in place for this. Like, this is how I can respond to this situation. Because there are certain times, and I'll give you the example with like people pleasing, that, for example, someone will ask me to help them with something, and the old version of me would instantly say yes. Instantly. I wouldn't even think about it, even if it was something I didn't want to do or I did want to do. I would say yes right away, because my go-to was like helping people, doing stuff for other people. It didn't matter if I had the time for it, if I was like way too busy to do something like that, if I didn't really want to do the task, if I wasn't capable of doing the task. Like, I wouldn't even think of that stuff. Whereas a boundary example of that would be when someone asks me to do something, I want to give myself like 12 to 24 hours to like really think about, okay, do I have capacity to take this on? Do I want to do this thing? You know, does this person do things for me, or am I just constantly giving myself to them? What value does it bring, etc.? So there's like boundaries like that. That would be kind of like an example of a boundary. But yeah, so I wanted to share like some boundaries I've implemented in the last year that have really helped me and brought me to this place that I am today, that I feel very proud of. I feel very happy in my life, and a big part of that is because through the boundaries. So the first one that I have is having days where I don't do anything and I don't have plans. So to give you context, before all of this, aka like last year and before, I would make plans every single night of the week. I always had something on my social calendar, whether that was like spending time with Daniel, spending time with family, making plans with friends, networking, getting together with someone for coffee, doing something work related, anything, like you name it. My calendar was booked solid every single day, and I regularly was burnt out because I would be working all day, working on my other job, working on whatever else, my passion projects, having social obligations, and naturally just feeling drained. So I would have something every single day, and honestly, the reason for that was because I felt like so many people were asking me for things or to do things, and I felt obligated to say no. So one boundary that I put in place is making sure that up to 3 days of the week, I don't commit myself to any type of social obligation. So I pick those days and I'm like, no, I can't do anything these days. I'm staying at home, I'm resting, I'm, being productive for myself, whatever it may be. Like, I'm doing something for me on those 3 nights. It's almost as if I'm booked with someone else, but I'm booked with myself. So those calendar days are like blocked off, like I can't do anything else. So that's the boundary. So if someone asks me to do something, for example, on a Monday night, and I was busy, because I have my boundary in place, which is like I'm busy with myself, I wouldn't even be able to say yes to that, because that's the boundary that I've put in place. And I used to be someone who booked myself every single night, and that just wasn't serving me anymore, and I became exhausted and I wasn't enjoying like all the things that I was doing. And so that was something that I thought was really important, and I think it's really important for people to have nights for themselves that's just for them. It doesn't matter what they're doing, whether you're watching Netflix or you're working on goals. It's just for you. You've decided to give yourself that time. The next one is a sad one, but it's cutting people from my life, and this is like definitely like a major boundary, so take it for what it is. But there was definitely a point in my life where I kept people around for certain excuses, for certain reasons, and that was really just an excuse. So for example, like, oh, like this person has been in my life for so long, like there's so much history between them, like that's why we're friends, or we've been through so much together, or I don't know, like the excuses you tell yourself. And if you're watching this, like I know that there's someone that comes to your mind, or that did come to your mind when I'm talking about this. But I was the type of person that I kept everyone around because I just like constantly was like, it's not that bad, it's not that bad, it's not that bad, like we're friends, that's what matters, we have so much history, etc., etc. But ultimately, like, people change, people grow, and sometimes people don't serve you anymore. And I truly believe now that there are people that come into your life for certain phases, for certain seasons, and that's all that they're meant for. And as sad that as that can sound, and maybe like cutthroat, like maybe it sounds, I think that's what I believe, and I think that is how other people should see certain things with certain people. Because if someone is draining your energy, if someone in your life is toxic, if someone in your life is abusing you, whether that's mentally, emotionally, physically, if someone is just constantly like not making you feel good, and when you think about spending time with that person, if you leave feeling drained versus energized, then that person shouldn't be in your life anymore. And ultimately, that's a boundary that you have to decide with yourself, and sometimes that can be really hard, and I totally get it. It's taken me almost 32 years to get to this point, but that was a boundary that I set with myself, is that I only want people in my life that make me feel really, really good and really energized, and I am very fulfilled when I spend my time with them. And everyone else who doesn't fit in that category, I either want to cut them out of my life, and that's sad, or if it's, you know, let's just say it's like a family member and it's not as easy to just like cut them out, then I'm going to limit my time with that person. I'm going to be very intentional about like what I give that person in terms of my energy. The next one is like a sleep routine and how I unwind. So once again, this is kind of going back to the first one, but I used to just like jam pack my schedule. I was going out to eat, you know, you get together late with someone. I come home, I'm on my phone, I like don't get a lot of sleep, I'm groggy the next day, like it's a bad ripple effect. So right now, a boundary that I've put in place is every single night of the week, I want to get between 7 and 9 hours. So I don't necessarily care how that happens, whether that means I'm going to bed early or whether I'm going to bed later, but I'm waking up later. In 2023, I want to have a goal of like going to bed and waking up at the same time every day. But for now, I don't necessarily care how that I get the hours. I just want to make sure I'm getting 7 to 9. But with that being said, I have a like non-negotiable for how I unwind, and this is like probably going to come across as a weird one, but I like to have just a little bit of time, whether that's 30 minutes to an hour, just to myself, and not necessarily like with Daniel or with a friend or with my like a family member or whatever. I just like to like be like alone, like in my bed. I make myself a cup of herbal tea. I usually have like a piece of dark chocolate. I like to just watch some YouTube, or maybe I'm reading, but I really, really prioritize that time for myself and by myself. Like I'm not exerting any external energy, I'm not giving anything, and I'm just like allowing myself to fully unwind. And that to me has been basically a boundary that I've put in place with those who would be in my space at that hour, to say like, this is time for me and I really need this to unwind. And it's been like a game changer. I feel like I fully am able to just like allow my battery to recharge a little bit to then have a very restful sleep, versus before I used to just like give, whether that was like watching a show with someone, going out to dinner late, or you know, again, being on my phone, or just being like constantly stimulated. Okay, the next boundary that I set with myself is alcohol, and I've talked about this in a previous vlog about like my whole alcohol journey, so I won't get too much into it now, but basically I've come to a place in life where alcohol just really isn't serving me, and I haven't got to this place yet where I've cut it out completely. So I'll definitely still indulge in a glass of wine, like for example like Christmas or like my birthday or like a bigger occasion. I'm not the type of person who like wants to fully cut things out and like have this like restrictive mindset, but I have come to this place where I just don't feel like alcohol is serving me or making me feel good. And this goes back to everything I've been talking about, but I'm really trying to live a life where things energize me, things fulfill me, things make me feel good, and alcohol wasn't one of them. It, you know, impacted my sleep, which I obviously just talked about. It didn't really make me feel good. It, you know, if you indulged in more alcohol, sometimes you can like act a certain way, or like say things you regret, or yeah, it's just, I don't have to explain like what alcohol does to you, but I basically came to this place where it just wasn't serving me anymore. So a boundary that I set with myself is limiting my alcohol consumption. And because I've put that boundary in place, like I understand like when a situation happens where there's alcohol involved, like I'm out with friends, or maybe I'm going to like a little gathering or something like that, I can, you know, remind myself of that boundary of saying like, no, this isn't a night that I'm having alcohol, and like that's okay, versus like constantly trying to make the decision like, oh, should I, shouldn't I? It's just already made because I have that boundary in place. The next one that I have is a morning routine. So this is something that I've been passionate about for a few years now, but I've really narrowed down my morning routine. And again, this also happens no matter what time I wake up. So if I wake up at 7, or if I like sleep until 9, my morning routine is a non-negotiable. So that means that I wake up in the morning, I boil the kettle to make myself a warm lemon water, I meditate for around 10 minutes, I journal, I read a little bit of nonfiction, and then I basically decide if I need to do anything else, like depending on how I'm feeling, like do I want to pull a card, do I want to just like do some stretching or whatever, like I can decide in that moment. And then basically I'll eat breakfast, walk able, and then get my day, essentially get ready to get my day started. And that to me is like what I need to be able to start my day and really feel good about getting things going throughout the day and feeling energized and feeling optimal to take on the day. And before, again, I'm trying to give you the before and after, but before I would literally roll out of bed, throw my hair up, like put my tracksuit on or whatever, and I would basically just get to work. And I would always get to work in a late fashion. Like I would be like, shoot, like I need to get out of bed now, because like I literally start work in 5 minutes. And that would set the tone for the whole entire day. Like I would constantly feel like frazzled, and like that I'm catching up to things and that I'm feeling behind. And it's just like, it's making the day like run me instead of me running my day. And so the morning routine is a boundary that I put in place because it is a non-negotiable for me. So it doesn't matter what I'm doing, where I am, I always make sure to set aside that time to have a morning routine that makes me feel good, makes me feel grounded, and makes me feel like charged for the day ahead, and it makes me feel in control of the day that I'm having. The next one is a very annoying one for everyone in my life. Almost all my friends, Daniel, and my family have complained about it, but it's D&D status on my iPhone. So if you have an Android, I don't know if this is a possibility, but on your iPhone, you can set different statuses throughout your day, and essentially D&D is do not disturb. So I basically have D&D on almost all day, and I have different settings. I'll see if I can like show you here. So I have different ones. So it's like my wind down, Sunday, reset, working, morning routine, all of that, and just like the regular like do not disturb. And so basically for my morning routine, I will have D&D on all morning because it's already set to those times that like I'm doing my morning routine. I'm not responding to like text messages. I'm not on my phone or anything. It will have a working hours. So between the hours of 10 and 4, I think it is, it's set to D&D because I'm focused on working. I'm not responding to texts. I'm not on social media, all of that stuff. So I turn D&D on for that. And then I have kind of like an evening wind down. So this is like after dinner, and then basically like going to bed, and then I have D&D on all night while I sleep, just because obviously I'm sleeping, I'm not responding anything. I do a full D&D on Sundays because I just want to be like almost like a digital detox, and I don't have any notifications on my phone, nothing like that turns on. And it's annoying for other people in my life because if people are trying to contact you, sometimes it does annoy them that they can't like get a hold of me. But honestly, it's just been like a game changer for me to focus, and it's a boundary that I set for myself, because when you constantly are replying to like all your text messages or things that you're doing, it is telling the world that you are constantly available to give. Whereas like when I set myself as D&D, like this is time for me. Like I am prioritizing the things that I'm focusing on. And when I have time, when I have energy, I'll then like respond to the person, or I'll do whatever is being asked of me. I'll like check that notification or whatever, right? So D&D is annoying for other people, but it's been important to me to set as a boundary to show that like I'm focused on the things that matter to me and I'm prioritizing those things first. Everything else comes second. The last one that I wanted to talk about in terms of boundaries is what I consume and what I talk about. So I'll talk about the consumption piece first. So again, before on social media, on my Instagram specifically, I would follow anyone and everyone, and I would get caught in this like mindless scrolling spiral of just looking at everyone's stories, like refreshing the page to look at posts, like looking at people's content that serves no purpose or brings no value to my life. And I would just get caught in that consumption. And there's a million reasons why like that's not good, but ultimately like it would make me feel drained. I'm spending so many hours on my phone. I'm taking in so much content, which is just like a lot in general. Like there's so many reasons. And so one thing I've done in terms of a boundary is I only follow people that I truly value the content that they put out. Like I love the content that they share. I think that it brings me value. I think it's educational, it's inspirational. Like I only follow people that do that for me. If I follow someone like that, but sometimes their content is just too much for me, I will mute them. So like mute their stories or mute their posts. That's not to say I don't want to see their content, and sometimes I'll check it out, but sometimes there are certain people where like I actually do really like them and I like the content that they share, but sometimes it's just too much all the time. So I will mute them. And I make sure that I'm only consuming things that fulfill me and that make me feel good. Like I never want to be triggered by the content that's being like shown to me. And that might suck that I like don't follow someone or I unfollowed someone. But honestly, like if it's for your own mental health, like who cares? Like you're the one having to go through the content. So what does it matter? So that's been a huge game changer. But also the opposite side is what I talk about. So again, it's like I want to make sure that I'm constantly talking about things that make me feel good and that make me feel inspired. And this isn't so much social media, because I do feel like I've always like been pretty good at that. Again, I am like that type of person. Like I'm very like positive and like optimistic. So I wouldn't say I struggle with that. But in terms of what I talk about, I found that, and this goes back to like cutting people out of your life as well, but I found that it got to a point where I was like getting together with certain people and I don't want to say like talking shit. That's maybe not the right expression, but you're like talking about like drama or things that just like don't serve you, if that makes sense. And I'm trying to think of an example, but it's like I get together with a friend who like I'm excited to see. I haven't seen them in a long time. Like we're excited to get together and like catch up, but yet the whole conversation and the whole dinner we're talking about like different people from our past, or like, oh my god, did you see so and so is doing this? And I'm not even saying it has to be actually in a bad way. I think I said like talking shit and maybe that sounds bad, but it can be in like a positive or a negative. Like, oh my god, did you see so and so is like went on like a really cool trip and blah blah blah. Like it can mean sorry, my memory card got full there. But yeah, it doesn't have to be like a negative of like, oh, we were just talking shit about someone. Like that's not what I mean. It can be like on either direction. So, oh, did you see so-and-so like went on that trip and they did XYZ and like her outfit was so cool. Like technically that's a positive, but like if I don't talk to that person that I'm mentioning is going on this trip, like why am I like using my energy to talk about that? You know what I mean? Like why am I consumed of someone else's life and therefore like creating conversation about it? I feel like I'm not explaining this one the best, so hopefully it kind of makes sense. But I felt like when I was getting together with people, I was spending the time talking about surface level things that brought no value to myself or the person I'm like catching up with and getting dinner with. And that happens a lot. And again, it doesn't have to be talking about other people all the time. It can be just like basic things that just aren't really important or deep. And I'm not saying that every conversation has to be like deep and like getting to the nitty-gritty of everything. However, a boundary that I set with myself is that when I am getting together with the people that I'm excited to spend my time with and I'm really looking forward to, a boundary that I have is that I'm not going to speak about surface level things that bring that person or myself zero value. And I just want to make sure that when I'm spending time with people, I'm energizing them and I'm filling my own cup as well. And I'm talking about things that are meaningful to me, that make me feel good, that fill my cup, that inspire me, that inspire others, etc. So I just think it's important to like get away from like the noise and the things that like you think is cool to talk about, but it's like, what value does that bring to your life? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Like, I just want to talk about things that fulfill me and that make me feel good versus just like talking about things because it's like a hot topic right now or like a trend or something like that to fill the time. It's like, I want to make sure when I'm spending time with people, it's quality time. And so that's kind of like a boundary that I set with myself, is that I'm not going to waste my time talking about things that are not always like positive or inspiring or uplifting. So hopefully that made sense. I know that one's like a little bit harder to explain because I feel like it sounds like a negative, but it doesn't always have to be a negative. It's more so just like a surface level basic topic that has really no depth to it. Anyways, those are the boundaries that I have set with myself this past year, and I truly feel like it has completely changed my life for the better. I feel like I'm in a much happier, calm, grounded place in my life. I feel like I have zero drama in my life. I have people in my life that really fulfill me and energize me and that I love being in my life. And I spend my time very oh my gosh, what am I trying to say? Like, I'm very specific and like intentional. Intentional is the word. I spend my time very intentionally, and I make sure that the things that I'm doing are constantly fulfilling me, energizing me, filling my cup, making me feel good, prioritizing me, putting my needs first. And that to me is really important. And when you start to kind of feel good all the time, you start to crave that feeling more and more. And yeah, it's just like made me feel really good, and I feel like a big reason for that is the boundaries that I've set in my life. So I'm definitely going to have more for 2023 because I do think that they're super important, and just like getting more refined with how you're living your life and how intentional you're being with it, and being in control of your time and your energy, and just putting yourself first. Like, fill your own damn cup before everyone else's. So that is my little boundaries 101. I hope you found this helpful. If you struggle with boundaries, if anything in today's video you related to or you had an experience with, like, share below, message me. But thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in tomorrow's video.